All right, so we're moving on to the next step, which is notes 41, which is solving trinomials. This is actually a little bit easier than what we'll be doing for part of it. The factoring is still going to be the same. So when we look at this right here, this is the factored version of the problems that you did in the last section. So we're going to figure out how to solve this. In other words, find out what x needs to be in order for this whole thing to be equal to 0. So a couple things to note. There's two parentheses, so you're going to have two answers. All right. And so here we go. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to split it into two problems. And you're going to do x plus 4 equals 0 and x minus 5 equals 0. Now you're going to use your equation solving skills to get x by itself. So here I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And I'm going to get x equals 4. And I'm going to do the opposite of what this is right here. So since this is a minus, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And I'm going to get x equals 5. And those two things right there are your answers. I'm pretty sure in my math lab it asks you to put commas in between those answers. So you're going to have to look at that. And the reason this works is because if I were to plug in x equaling 5 here for this x, this would become 5 minus 5, which equals 0. And if you remember, anything times 0 equals 0. So only one of those things need to equal 0 in order for the whole thing to be 0. All right. Here's another example you're going to see in my math lab right here. So again, you're going to split this in two. All right. Except this time it's a little different. You just have an x and you just set it equal to 0. So half your problem's done. X equals 0. Because if this right here equals 0, then the whole thing's going to equal 0. All right. And then I have x plus 5 equals 0. Do my line, subtract 5 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 5. All right. And move the toolbar. That's not what I want to do. All right. So for both of these problems, by the way, my math lab is going to want you to write them with commas in between them. It's going to look like that. Oops, that's supposed to be a minus 4. I made a mistake. And so this one would be x equals 0, comma, negative 5. And that's the answer that goes in my math lab. Make sure you put a comma between those answers. That's a terrible start. All right, so the last example I'll show you is what we've been doing this whole time. So what we're going to do is you're going to use the x method that you've been using. So if you remember, what goes up top is that one goes up top. So negative 8 goes up here. And then this goes down here on the bottom. Okay. And then what you're going to do is to find these numbers on the side, you're going to use your factor chart. And so we're going to look at things that will multiply to negative 8, but add to negative 2. So if we go to our factor chart, you've got 4 and 1 and 2 and 2. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong factors. Factors of 8. 1 and 8, 2 and 4. So if I look at those, and if you remember, you go back and you can look, if we have both are negative, then one of our factors is going to be negative. We're going to subtract them. So I'm going to look right here, and I'm going to notice that 4 minus 2 happens to be, I can get as 2, which works for this. So I'm going to have my factors. I'm going to have, I have 4 and 2. And the sign, I'm going to write this down again. the sign of the bigger number has to match the bottom number. All right. So in this case, when I look, the bottom number I'm working with is negative, so that means this has to be a negative. All right, and then you're going to drop that into parentheses. So I have a set of parentheses, right? And since x always goes in front, and then I plug my factors in. So I have minus 4 plus 2. And I can't lose, in this case, the equals 0. Okay? So now this is just like the example we did above. We're going to split up two problems. We got 1, 2. We have x minus 4 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. Plus 4, plus 4, x equals 4, minus 2, x equals negative 2. So those are my two answers, and I take them and I separate them with a comma, and then I'm done. So go ahead and do assignment 41, and then you'll have a quiz at the end of the week, and let me know if you have any questions.